Now, Africa Check, South African media and Google are creating an election fact-checking coalition. The collaboration is aimed at helping voters make informed decisions in the voting booth and curb election misinformation. For more on this, I'm joined by Africa Check researcher Keegan Leech. Keegan, thanks for your time this afternoon. Let's talk about the primary objective of the fact-checking coalition formed by Africa Check, South African media and Google ahead of this year's national elections in South Africa.
Well, quite broadly, the primary objective is to make sure that people have accurate information on which to base their vote. So they can be sure that whatever they're looking at or reading or seeing on social media is accurate, and that whatever they are choosing to make their vote based off of is something that has been vetted by someone.
So let's talk about this misinformation. I mean, what sort of information normally can be abused or misused?
Well, often it's not even deliberate. Anyone can make mistakes. Anyone can pass on something that they've half read or not checked. And so it's not always as malicious as someone deliberately trying to swing an election. Often it's something that someone has heard and they passed on because they were worried and they didn't sort of check it out beforehand. And that can swing elections anyway from, hearing misinformation about what a party claims it's going to do if it wins, to hearing misinformation that, your local polling station is not running on the election day and so you don't show up to vote.
So obviously, Keegan, there's going to be a bucket load of information that's going to be correlated and amplified, the ability to verify some of that information. So, for instance, are potential voters or voters going to be able to say, this particular party 5 years ago, this was their election manifesto, these are the things that they promised to do, this is what they've promised to do in this particular manifesto, and do a comparison of the two manifestos, for instance?
I guess that's possible. One of the issues there is that a lot of the parties, there are many parties competing in this election, a lot of them haven't governed before, and so it's very difficult to look at previous manifestos and see whether they've come through on their promises. In that case, a lot of our focus is, what do they say about the state of the country at the moment? Are those facts accurate? And are the things they're saying about, what they can see around them, are they true? And there are a couple of parties who will say things about where they've governed, where that's possible. And in that case, it's possible to look at, what they've done and the things they say they've delivered on. But it's not just those parties who are going to be making important claims ahead of this election.
This is an important election, particularly for first-time voters. I mean, it's important for everybody, but let's focus a little bit on the first-time voters. I'd imagine that there's a certain amount of information that they're going to be looking for that might be different from those that have voted before. Are these some of the things that you take into account? I mean, as a researcher, is it something that you've looked at?
Well, we try and aim our content as broadly as possible. So we're trying to focus across the whole country, and that means that we're going to have a whole range of different people reading our reports that we publish. Some of them are going to be first-time voters. Others are going to have been voting for a long time and maybe have a particular loyalty to particular parties and things like that. To try and get as broad an appeal as possible, what we're focused on is less sort of who might be reading our content and more what are the most important things for us to vet and verify. So, for example, party manifestos, especially from major parties, are a real highlight of our work during election season.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the information that you're going to have in these reports. I don't doubt for any stretch of the imagination that there's going to be a huge amount of research that's going to go into the work that you're going to do over the next few weeks.
Absolutely. And you can see that some of it we've already started publishing. If you check out Africa Check's website, africacheck.org, or if you look at some of our coalition partners who are also publishing, either republishing our work or publishing their own work, groups like AFP and SABC News ENCA, the Mail and Guardian, Caxton, which run lots of local papers. You can keep track as we publish on this sort of thing. And there is going to be a lot. Like I say, there's a lot of parties. There are some new parties contesting this election for the first time. And each party has a lot to say. So it really is a lot of information going around, even before we get to things like social media and what might be published by people who aren't politicians or competing in the election themselves.
The veracity of the information that you publish is obviously going to be critical. How are you getting your information?
That's a great question. And people often ask, who fact-checks the fact-checkers? Who is vetting what Africa Check says? And the answer is you can do that yourselves. We're committed to reporting our work in a way that is entirely transparent. It makes it clear where all our sources are from. We quote experts that we speak to. We link to reports that we use, and we make sure that information is all publicly available. So hopefully, if you're following our work and you are a little bit suspicious about something that we have said, or you're not entirely sure of our results, then you can follow the same process that we have, and you can check every step of our working.
Keegan, I'm not sure if you listened to the conversation that we had previously, where one of my colleagues, Ketlego, was in a place called Modder East. Now, Modder East is a small area in Johannesburg, right? So it is not going to potentially be high on the radar of the information that's going to be available to you. But a lot of the decisions that voters are going to make are localized, right? Many people are not concerned about the grand scheme of things. They're concerned about the issues that they were talking about, that the grass is not cut in the park that's outside my front yard. There are drug dens up the street. There are no lights for me to feel safe when I walk home from work in the evening. Is that information going to be available?
Hopefully. And because we're not always going to be able to, like you say, we're not always even going to have exposure to that sort of local level information, especially in smaller communities. Part of our work is aimed at teaching people how you can vet information you see for yourself. So, for example, if a local WhatsApp group or a local paper or something like that has shared a piece of information, an election claim or a campaign, or a claim about who is responsible for a local issue, then hopefully you can consult some of our guides and some of our work and ask questions like, okay, what's the source for this? How do I know that they're telling the truth and they're being accurate? What can I consult to confirm that this is true? Those sorts of things. And hopefully just having a little bit more exposure to those skills and a little bit more of an idea of what sort of red flags to look out for makes people more certain that the information they're getting is checked by someone, even if it's just them.